Hi, everybody. Welcome to the second hour of the Santita Jackson Show on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you once again. We had a stirring conversation on historically Black colleges and universities. Did you know that they have been underfunded to the tune of $12.6 billion, just the land grant colleges alone in 16 states? Tennessee State, $2 billion. Can you imagine? They're owed that money. Think about it. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King was a product of an HBCU. Reverend Jesse Jackson, Reverend Andrew Young, astronaut Dr. Ron McNair. And we could just keep on going and going. Elaine Locke, first Black graduate of Harvard University. You just keep on going. Roberta Flack and Leontine Price and Donny Hathaway. We can keep on going. They just continue to produce Black genius. And with fewer resources. I want you to listen to that first hour. But let's talk about something, this tragedy, something that people are calling unforgivable. The IDF bombed workers from the World Central Kitchen 3 times. They said they were looking for one person in Hamas. Now, the people of Palestine are already starving. Food has been weaponized, and you have many Israelis who are blocking the trucks that are to enter Palestine. This is the reality. But now, can you imagine bombing this convoy 3 times? How does this work, everybody? The World Central Kitchen said, according to this Common Dreams report, that a targeted Israeli strike killed 7 members of its aid team in Gaza as they left a warehouse in Gaza where they had just unloaded more than 100 tons of food. It's based in Washington, D.C. You know the magnificent chef and the magnanimous chef, Jose Andres, who this is his group. This is his way of giving to the world. And these people have been killed. What happened? What happened? Oh, boy. We've got to talk about that with you, Attorney Daryl Jones, and you, Reverend Dr. Todd Yeary. You, Pastor Gregory Livingston, I'm so glad that you're with us, this seminarian, this brilliant seminarian. Can't get away from you, can I? Rainbow push, it never, ever, ever, ever stops. But he has done so much down through the years, and I'm so glad that he's joining us once again. He's a pastor, preacher, ordained minister, and he's in New York City, but we still claim you in Chicago. Of course, he is the founder and president of Economics Global, Inc. Got to talk about that. And we're going to be talking with Jonah Karsh from If Not Now. But I'm going to start off with you, Attorney Tarek Khalil. I want you to talk to us about what we are looking at. I don't understand it. Of course, you are an attorney. You're an activist. And with the Chicago board member of the American Muslims for Palestine. What happened? How is it that the IDF bombed them 3 times? What happened? Step back and just set the table for us.
Okay, well, yeah. If you're telling me to set the table, then there's going to be a lot more that we can talk about. But just referring to this incident, if you don't understand what is actually taking place in Gaza and the policy that has been in place in Gaza for the last 16 plus years, then you really can't understand why something like this would happen. Israel has a policy of starvation on the people of Gaza. Since the siege began back in 2007, it was declared hostile territory, foreign territory, and treated the people of Gaza as subclass human beings, essentially, by depriving the Palestinians in Gaza of the basic necessities to sustain and develop their lives. There was actually a policy in Gaza from 2007 to approximately 2010, where Palestinians in Gaza were put on a diet. And Dov Weisglass, former Israeli spokesperson for Ariel Sharon, said that we must put the Palestinians on a diet, but not make them die of hunger. It's a policy of starvation. So for the IDF, and that's why if you watch rallies and you listen to Palestinian commentators and activists speak on the IDF, we call the IDF the IOF, Israeli Offensive Forces. There's no defense for this. That's a misnomer to call the IDF the IDF. There's no defense posture here. There's no defensive posture here. The Israeli government is the aggressor. The Israeli government is the occupier. The Israeli government is the colonizer. And Israel has a history of going after humanitarian organizations. So WCK is just one example of it. And they've attacked hospitals, they've attacked UN shelters, they've attacked schools, they've attacked residential buildings. I mean, 70% of the residential infrastructure has been destroyed, has been leveled in Gaza. There's not a single hospital in Gaza that's fully operational. More than half are completely non-functional, and only some are only partially functional. The largest hospital, Shifa Hospital, I mean, we just saw the carnage after the Israeli withdrawal, stripping patients of their clothes, killing doctors, killing patients, just an absolute siege on an infrastructure that houses sick people, injured people, wounded people. So to hear a story that the IDF kills 7 other innocent lives, to me, unfortunately, it's not surprising, but it is something that should awaken us and put us on notice, especially here in the United States. Especially here in the United States.
Why here?
Because we are citizens and civics of the only country in the world that is aiding and abetting the first ever live streamed genocide in the world throughout the 6,000 plus years of recorded history. And we are involved in that. It's our tax money, Santita. Oh my God. It's our tax dollars that are contributing to this. So if we as Americans are not willing to step up and speak truth to power and speak up against this administration and speak up against policy that is not only not doing anything to counter the ongoing genocide, but is enabling it and contributing to it and aiding and abetting it and being complicit in it, that's a problem. And if we can't get our collective voices together and actually influence the right kind of change, and here would be the right kind of change, we must absolutely, all of us, all institutions, at the very, very bare minimum, call for a permanent and immediate ceasefire. And before there's a question on the UN Security Council resolution, that resolution did not call for a permanent ceasefire. It called for a ceasefire during the month of Ramadan, which is about to end in about 8 days, and with the potential of it being a long-lasting ceasefire. But that's not a demand right now for an immediate and permanent ceasefire, not at all. And we have to be cognizant of these deceptions, these word games. Look at what Biden said during the State of the Union address, saying that he wants to build a port. So you want to build a port to provide humanitarian aid to a population that you are enabling the genocide of. How does that make intuitive sense? You can't make sense of that. So you want to play the role of arsonist as well as firefighter. You can't have that kind of contradictory role and play and implement a contradictory policy where you're killing lives and then you claim you want to save lives. Absolutely not. I'm not surprised at all by this. It's tragic. I'm in tears every time I hear stories like this. These people didn't deserve this. They wanted to bring food to a starving population that is on the brink of famine that we are complicit in. And that is why we need to talk about it. And thank you for having us to talk about it. But we have to do something about it as well, because Joe Biden, our president, can end this with one simple phone call, but he refuses to do so. And that is something that should be.
Well, no, which takes me to the why. Because Jared Kushner, and you have Israeli developers who said this is beautiful beachfront. And I mean, if we can get these Palestinians out the way, and then you've got all this gas and oil. I don't even think people understand the jewel that Gaza is, because it's the largest open air prison in the world, and it's essentially been turned into just one of the poorest places on earth. Talk to me.
The jewels, the value of Gaza are the 32,000+ lives that have been taken. They've taken that value away from Gaza. the 2.3 million Palestinians that are living in Gaza. These are our jewels. The 1.2 million children that are living in Gaza that were born into a prison camp, that were born into a siege and blockade that we are aiding and abetting. These are the prized possessions. These are the prized, the real prize of Gaza. And any innocent life being taken in Gaza is something that should awaken all of us. And I understand that we can point to a lot of different incidents, but if we don't look at the human devastation that is occurring, and look, there is moral value in our words, Ms. Jackson. If we as Americans don't speak out against this and don't do something and pressure our administration to change it, not in my name. Don't do this in my name. Don't take my tax dollars and fund the bombing of innocent civilians. I don't want that. I don't want to see that. I don't want you to aid and abet the entity that is committing these actions. There's a lot of atrocities throughout the world. But if we can effectuate change on one of them, we have a duty, a moral duty. And that's why we have to use our voices in a moral way to pressure an administration that is complicit in the ongoing slaughter of a defenseless civilian population. Let me paint you this quick picture before I end here.
Mm-hmm.
Gaza on October 6th, not October 7th, October 6th, was living under a siege and blockade. 97% of the water is contaminated, poisonous, unfit for human consumption. Basic elemental things that we take for granted here. Electricity, for example. It's about 2 to 4 hours of electricity per day. So unclean water, barely enough electricity to make ends meet. Population that is lacking in the necessary foodstuffs for their basic sustenance. This is all a part of the policy of the siege and blockade that has been implemented since 2007. And now it's intensified 1,000-fold with our tax money and with U.S. weapons. If we don't contextualize it in that way, then we think that, okay, I can just look away. I'm not implicated. Yes, you are. Inadvertently or intentionally, we are all implicated in this. Biden's hands are filled with the blood of Palestinian children, and also now with the blood of dual nationals, Canadians and U.S. citizens as well, because the weapons that were used against hospitals, UN shelters, and WCK are funded and aided by the U.S. government, and our tax dollars contribute to it. That is something that we should all be railing against, and we cannot just sit idly by.
Jonah Karsh, if not now, what say you? You're really part of the family of this show, and you said that this is not the world that you want. You did not sign up for this. What do you make of what happened with the killing of these workers?
Yeah,
I mean bombing them
great.
3 times. Jonah, bombing them 3 times. 3.
I mean, I don't know if I can say it better than attorney Mr. Khalil just did. A pleasure to hear from him, and a pleasure to be back on the show as always. I mean, it's clear that this was intentional. In fact, the articles that you sent us to read about this before the show, the Israeli government is not even denying that they meant to bomb those things. They just are saying, oh, well, there was someone with Hamas. We thought there was someone with Hamas with them, without any evidence. It's clearly a contrived excuse for a massacre, because the policy of the Israeli government right now is to speed up, as Tarek said, for years, the policy of the Israeli government has been to limit the amount of food that goes into Gaza without killing the population, a sort of slow motion starvation, or a slow motion permanent state of poverty. Now, as this has escalated into genocide, the goal is to kill these people by starving them to death. And so if it hasn't been clear from the bombing of hospitals, if it hasn't been clear from the massacre when Israel killed all those people that were going to get bread last month or in February. I mean, there have been just countless incidents, and you have to, at this point, have your head in the sand to not to believe anything that the IDF says about their intentions, because clearly what's going on here is this is an intentional policy of genocide. This is an intentional policy of starvation. This is an intentional effort to destroy the Palestinian people of Gaza. And as a Jewish American who is told that the state of Israel represents my interests and keeps me safe, and whose tax dollars are paying for this, I say, not in my name, not at all. Hell no. I mean, this is unconscionable. And I want to add something to what Tarek said. One of the articles that you sent mentioned that the food that World Central Kitchen was bringing into Gaza during this incident came from that temporary pier that was announced at the State of the Union. Now, I remember when it was announced, they said it was going to take several weeks to build. And I thought, well, why are we waiting several weeks to build a pier when the only reason that we're building the pier is because there is a man-made famine, a man-made genocide in Gaza. The only reason that food isn't getting into Gaza is because the Israeli military is blocking it at the numerous crossings that they control. There are tons of trucks holed up at Rafah. At the Israeli crossings, there are extreme radical right-wing protesters preventing the aid from coming in. And instead of Joe Biden picking up the phone, and it is really true, and we've seen this historically over and over again, that when U.S. presidents call the Prime Minister of Israel and say, you're not getting our military aid unless you do what we want, whether that is stop the bombing, whether that is a permanent ceasefire, whether that is end the siege, or whether it's as simple as let food in so that people don't starve to death, it works. It works when the president of the United States uses that $3.8 billion plus per year that the United States gives Israel, which, by the way, prior to the war in Ukraine, was more than all the other countries in the world combined receiving in military aid. If they use that as leverage and say, you're not getting that anymore, we're not releasing that to you, that works. That gets the Israeli government to do what the United States wants. But Joe Biden refuses to do that. It's inexplicable to me. The only reason he is prioritizing his personal allegiance and connection to Israel over the lives of Palestinians, over the prevention of genocide. And I find it really unconscionable at this point. And I'm wondering how many more innocent people is it going to take for this to happen? Once again, that food that was brought in from World Central Kitchen was brought in at this pier only because President Biden refuses to make sure that it could go in at the crossings that already exist. So we spent 3 weeks building a pier to bring in food for the innocent people of Gaza that are starving, only to then have the workers that are bringing that food be bombed to death. There's not much left to say at that point other than that this needs to stop immediately and that President Biden needs to pick up the phone and stop funding this, because he can make it happen. And this learned helplessness, this talking about we need an immediate ceasefire, co-opting the language of a movement that has been actually fighting for peace in order to justify a continued war, it needs to stop. It needs to stop months ago, but it's never too late, because every life is precious. We will not forget. Many will not forgive what has already happened, but it is not too late for the president to do the right thing and save more lives before this escalates into the complete extermination of the Palestinian people of Gaza, which would just be beyond comprehension.
Jonah Karsh, if not now. Reverend Gregory Livingston, what do you see? I mean, I'm trying to figure out how the IDF would bomb this convoy 3 times looking for one person. It's just hard for me to wrap my mind around this. They knew that these were people there. And you have a lot of drone operators, Attorney Terry O'Neill, former national president of NOW, Attorney Darrell Jones, Transformative Justice Coalition chair, and Reverend Dr. Todd Yeary, Rainbow Push, and of course, the senior pastor of the iconic Douglas Memorial Community Church. I mean, you know that this is a famine. You know that there are many Israelis who are blocking the trucks from getting in. I mean, this is something. I'm just trying to figure out what the thinking is with someone who that you would starve someone to death, and that you would bomb someone 3 times. I, this really goes beyond the political. This is going to someone's humanity, Reverend Livingston. I mean,
First of all, it's
yeah.
great to go ahead, please.
No, please, because I know, and after that you jump in, Terry O'Neill, because I know this is like you're about to jump in the screen, Terry. I get it.
It's great to be back on your show, Santita. It's always a pleasure, and always great conversation that leads to some real progressive and positive action. When I heard about the incident, what happened, I had a very visceral response to it, because I've learned at a whole different level that how hard the complexities of human conflict can be. And what I mean by that is that I had this visceral reaction because I was just in Ukraine in September, leading an interfaith delegation of clergy and physicians there. And, I've been in foreign lands where there have been skirmishes, but I had never been in a place that was under attack by a superpower. And I learned the difference between rockets and missiles, and we were in bomb shelters every day. 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning, you get the air raid siren. It takes a missile 20 minutes to fly from Russia to Ukraine. And I remember they talked about in Kyiv, the capital, that they had the Iron Dome, which was supplied by Israel and America. And Zelensky had spoken before the UN. And so then Russia came back and came right through the Iron Dome. And I don't know if this was on the news or not anywhere else, but where we were, I mean, you could feel the concussive waves of the bombing, and they destroyed the Pepsi Cola factory and a hospital full of people. And so, and in visiting with a lot of the soldiers that were blown apart and children who have been orphaned, even when I was in Chicago in February, meeting there with Ukrainian soldiers who have been flown to America because Ukraine doesn't have the resources. But even still, being in Ukraine and Russia not allowing air travel in Ukrainian airspace. So many of these soldiers lost limbs because they had to put them on a train, transport them to Poland, then fly them to America. And so all that cruelty that I was able to witness on the ground and have a concern for my own life as well. It was very visceral to hear this because, when we were there and the bombings were happening, we would say, why doesn't America stop Russia and all this, and but then the complexities of it were incredible, from economic to China, and so even in this situation, when I heard this today, and I know now in a way I've never known before what it means to be a concerned person, a person of faith, a person of goodwill, boots on the ground in a war zone, that it creates thoughts, it creates feelings that I had never known the depth of before. So when I hear about what my brothers and sisters in Gaza are going through, because, Santita, when we left Ukraine, we were going to Libya because, for disaster relief and to deal with the religious communities there. But then October 7th happened. So my physician colleagues actually went to Gaza. Actually, 60 Minutes just did a piece on them a couple of weeks ago. And I know a couple of the guys, they were native Palestinian. They lost children, two of the doctors, and all that. And I'm sitting here, day by day, here in New York City, which has a whole nother vibe in terms of Israel and Hamas because of the nature and the demographics of New York. And it is so hard in terms of trying to make right. But what I do know is that even in the midst of war, we can do the right thing and we can do as much as we can. And what I mean by that is, one of the tenets of my ministry and my work has always been to try to alleviate suffering. And to do that, before I look at any label, I want to see a human being. And again, the viscerality of my experience in Ukraine and connecting with this, and then my brothers and sisters who are there in Gaza, had to be evacuated out, and all these things, being involved in the heat and meetings between my Jewish brothers and sisters, my Palestinian brothers and sisters, my Muslim brothers and sisters, and this going, and it's hot and it's heated. And it is kind of funny to me, for those that can relate, being the Black person in the midst of all this. And it's not so much about me being Christian as it is about me being Black. And my Blackness does bring something to the conversation, though, in terms of a people that have been suffering. Because what I have learned is that there is a common tongue that unites the globe, and that is the language of suffering. And so our brothers and sisters are suffering. And so we take that word and the word becomes flesh. We take the ink, it becomes blood. We take the paper, it becomes flesh. And we do something. And I think conversations like this are always a genesis for making the right thing happen.
I hope so, Attorney Terry O'Neill. You bombed somebody 3 times. Because, I mean, to be fair, the situation in Ukraine is quite complex. And we've delved into it in the show many times, and, it's just, the thing is, we could have had peace in Ukraine. Norman Solomon, one of the icons of the progressive struggle in the United States, wrote an appeal for peace at the beginning of this conflict, because that is actually a war. What we have in Gaza is an attack upon the civilian population. A war is between equal sides. Mm-hmm. One army faces another army. That's not what you have in Gaza. Mm-hmm. And Ukraine was ready to take the peace deal. America told them not to. Mm-hmm. And here we are. More than 500,000 of them are dead. This is the most ridiculous thing you've ever seen. And now we've got this. You bombed someone, Terry, 3 times? Mm-hmm. Really? Wait, with my money?
Well, yeah, it's because it's with our money. I mean, I don't see how Israel comes back from this.
What do you mean?
So the Netanyahu government is pursuing a genocide against the civilians in Gaza. About 13 years ago, I went to Jerusalem. I was invited there to meet with women's organizations. I met with women's organizations in Jerusalem, in Ramallah, and in other parts of also in Tel Aviv. I met with groups, many Palestinian women, women's organizations, and some Jewish Israeli women's organizations, talking about how you do grassroots organizing. That's what I did. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I have friends there, and to watch an actual genocide unfolding, as I think you said, Santita. No, as Mr. Khalil said, streaming live, the first in the time in the history of the human race we have streamed live a genocide. And one of the things that really strikes me, having grown up in Connecticut, my Jewish friends are not safer in this country. Mm-hmm. They are more at risk. They have been at risk for a number of years, given the increasing power of anti-Semitic Christian nationalist political activism here in this country. Jewish civilians in this country are very much at risk. This makes it so much worse. And for Benjamin Netanyahu to suggest that somehow he is doing this for the benefit of Jewish Israelis, of Jewish Americans, of anybody, is an outrageous lie. It is an obvious lie. The man is a genocidal person, and it makes me very, very angry, and it makes me very, very filled with grief for the people. And here you have our own president, Joe Biden, whose mindset is so slow to change from the changing conditions of the world. It is no longer 1945. It's not 1945 anymore. It's 2024, and his mindset. But let me just say, we've got Haiti going on. We have Ukraine going on. We have the genocide in Gaza going on. The United States throughout its history has used the interests of white patriarchal capitalists as its guiding force in its foreign policy. It has very little to do with the safety of the American people as such. It is the welfare of white patriarchal capitalists and welfare of corporations that has guided U.S. policy from day one. And we are now seeing a horrific consequence of I think, that reality. I'll just say that.
Well, Daryl Jones, what do you see?
Santita, I tend to learn something as I continue to age. I've never considered starvation as a weapon.
Mm.
That's what we're seeing in this Gaza, is starvation as a weapon. And to add insult to injury, what we see happening in Gaza with the World Central Kitchen and the seven that were just killed, it's not just those seven. Because what you really have are 176, according to the UN Relief and Works Agency, 176 of these types of workers that have been killed in the Gaza area because of the bombings that have gone on. It well exceeds that number of workers that are injured or killed in these types of situations. And so when we start looking at that, and I start thinking it through, because starvation as the weapon, right? What happens is that now the UAE has now paused any of its giving of food and assistance to Gaza. So that's a further weaponization of the starvation. What happens? Well, what then happens is that other countries start saying, it's not safe to send these folks in there to help, to provide the assistance, to provide the food. It furthers the weaponization of starvation. So that's a large part of what we see. It has a chilling effect. What Israel has done in this bombing has a chilling effect on those that are delivering food to help these people that are already in this horrible situation. And I believe it was Brother Khalil or Jonah, I don't remember which, that had laid out that, years prior, for the last 16 years, they had a policy that put in place to really starve these people, to have them controlled by hunger and to control all that's going on there. That's what we're seeing. And when I take that and I encapsulize it with what Terry has said, and I ask the question of our administration to articulate to me the policy, the strategy of what we have going on. Can I articulate that? I can't articulate it because I haven't heard it. I haven't heard it. And that's what bothers me incredibly about this. And I can only imagine, again, we're going through the election season right now. He's in the middle, President Biden's in the middle of this election. He's going to have to start explaining this. And I don't know how he does. I don't know how he does. So, that's what I see, Santita. And that's what's so troublesome, is that starvation as the weapon and the chilling effect to stop people from bringing food to those that need it.
Well, before I pivot to you, Reverend Dr. Erie, Jonah Karsh, you're doing a lot of political organizing, and you have been saying that this is a red line for you, that what's happening in Gaza is a red line. I mean, is there anything that President Biden can do, you and then you, Tarek, that he can do to come back from this?
Yeah, I mean, what I'll say is that I'm really inspired, and if not now, and the whole has taken the lead from the Palestinian community in Chicago and the effort that started in Michigan to in the primaries to either vote uncommitted if you have that option on your ballot in your state. I think Wisconsin has a vote uninstructed. Here in Illinois, we didn't have an uncommitted line, but in counties where you could write in, we were writing in Gaza in the Democratic primary ballot. I was very proud to do that. Probably one of the proudest votes I've ever taken. Although I'm only 23, so I can't say I've taken many. And in New York, there's an effort to leave it blank. So we're seeing all over the country, somewhere between 15, 20, 30% in some cases, like Hawaii, of the Democratic base that is expressing their dissatisfaction with President Biden on this issue, to the point where they're saying he should not be the nominee of this party if he's going to pursue this policy. It goes against our values. And that's where I stand on it. And I know many people, many Muslim Americans, Arab Americans, Palestinian Americans are gonna say in November, we've already lost him. I can't go against my family. I can't go against my people, and vote to reelect the man that's been funding this, even if that means that that somehow I'm enabling Donald Trump.
No, wait. You're not enabling Donald Trump. he's enabling Donald Trump.
That's right. Well, that's absolutely right. President Biden
Yeah, I mean,
bears
take that
responsibility
off of your
for putting
table.
voters in this position.
Well, let me
Yes.
tell you something. Don't let people box you into that.
Mhm.
He's the one who's doing this. He's doing this to himself. Don't put that on me, and don't put that on you. I'm tired of making the caveat as if I'm not doing anything to him. He's doing something to these people, and he's doing something to Haiti too, and I don't appreciate it. And he's not listening to me.
Right.
No, Jonah.
No, I think that's an important correction. That President Biden bears the responsibility for the decisions that he's made that have put voters in this position. And many people come November that voted uncommitted are going to continue to not vote for him. They're going to vote third party. They're going to stay home. And I understand intimately the risks of Donald Trump, who said that Jewish Americans who vote for Democrats hate their religion just 2 or 3 weeks ago. I very much do not want to see another Donald Trump presidency. And I've said on this show before that when it comes down to this, it's going to be a very tough decision for me. But if it comes down to preventing Trump, I will probably support President Biden. But I cannot fault anybody who's not going to do that come November because of the genocide that they've witnessed. If President Biden wants their votes, he needs to stop the genocide. It's that simple.
Yeah, it's on him. I mean, Tarek, before I pivot to you, Reverend Dr. Yuri, are you still there, Tarek? Well, let me go to you, Reverend Dr. Yuri.
Yes, I am. But go ahead.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, no, Tarek.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Is this a line in the sand for you? I mean, because people are saying to the Arab American community and to other people calling for ceasefire, what you're doing is you're hurting Biden. When I hear that, it just makes my hair stand on end. Because I'm like, well, I'm not doing anything to you. I mean, Ralph Nader says, no, it's not 32,000 people. Ralph Nader said it's 200,000. And I'm more inclined to believe Ralph Nader. I mean, you have people under the rubble who cannot be counted. You've got Jared Kushner, who says this is going to be great beachfront property. You've got Israeli developers who are publishing these papers in the newspapers over there. I mean, are you for real? And this is on
they don't care. Yeah, because they don't care about Palestinian lives. That to them it's about politics. It's about money. It's about land grab, and the devastation that is happening against the Palestinian people. That's not something that's of major concern. And I wanted to just briefly comment on the difficult choice that we have in November. And this is a slogan that we've been saying time and time again. In November, we will remember. So we don't know what's going to take place in Gaza over the next few months, but we do know that Joe Biden cannot erase his complicity in the ongoing genocide. Look, what Trump has said and what his ilk have said is ugly for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But Trump is not the one that's enabling a genocide. Joe Biden is. Joe Biden's the president. He's the one that's implementing this policy. Would Trump have done the same? Fine, we can have an intellectual discussion on that. But what does that do for us? There's things that we know for sure, and the things that we don't entirely know that we can hypothesize about. What we do know for sure is that Joe Biden is enabling a genocide. And as Jonah said, to each their own on that, obviously. And I'm here representing AMP. We're a 501c3, so I mean I can't get into who people should vote for and whatnot. But at the end of the day, I can't speak on what is actually taking place on the ground. And Joe Biden, his hands is full of the blood of Palestinian children. So if that can influence someone's vote, then so be it. There's something that you mentioned that I want us to really grapple with. You repeated a few times, three times, referring to WCK and three different attacks. I want us to really grapple with this because if you want something more dire to think about, how about 45,000 bombs being dropped in Gaza in approximately a 6-month span that weighs over 65,000 tons, which is approximately the weight of 3 nuclear bombs that were used in the Japanese city of Hiroshima. Let's wrap our head around that. And the most densely civilian, densely populated one of the most densely populated civilian areas in the world, 365 kilometers in size. We're talking 21 miles long, about 6-7 miles wide. I mean, that's smaller than some marathons that people run, and that's how many bombs have been dropped on a dense civilian population. That's something that should make us. It should make our heads spin, knowing that our tax dollars are contributing to this, and we can't let this kind of political posturing and this propaganda about self-defense, we're only targeting terrorists, et cetera, et cetera. Look, under international law, there is you can always talk in conceptual terms, but I prefer to talk in practical terms. There really is no practical difference. There's no practical distinction between the deliberate, intentional targeting of civilians and the absolute indiscriminate bombing of civilian areas. If you're indiscriminately bombing civilian areas, your intention is to kill civilians. So to get around that by using that, by saying that it wasn't intentional, that it was accidental, it just doesn't fly anymore, because we understand what circumstances mean. And we look at the practicalities of things and not just your words. You can't just make a statement and just have it fly. We have to look at what is actually happening on the ground. When you're talking about a densely civilian population, then there's no way that you can drop tons of bombs and then say that you never intended on killing civilians.
Well, Hiroshima and Nagasaki 3 times.
Yeah, pretty much. You can look at it that way.
Make it relatable to people, because
there you go.
See that, and when you get to Japan, you've got to wear a mask, because the immune system of the Japanese people have been so compromised by that. 80 years later, they're still feeling it. So to show you how the Lord works, Reverend Dr. Yuri, even if they continue to poison this area like this, let them build the beachfront. Because guess what? It's polluted. Look at what Terry. I mean, Reverend Dr. Yuri, I need you to help me with this, because we are a day away from Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's the anniversary. He was killed Thursday, April 4th, 1968. Thursday, April 4th, 2024. We have learned nothing, Reverend Dr. Yuri.
Well, I think we have learned some things. I think we're in denial about what we've learned. There is a saying, what can you expect from a pig but a grunt?
Okay.
You cannot expect moral behavior from immoral people. Unless you're going to have what we call in the church conversion, which obviously isn't happening. And the way we know it's not happening is even as we have the tragedy, the most current one of the ongoing tragedy of the annihilation of the Palestinian people in real time on live TV, is that there is a deal being finalized right now to sell $18 billion of F-15 fighter jets to Israel. Let's just be real clear. Let's be real clear that this is not the only bombing this week. It's the second bombing. Oh, there was one in Syria that hit the Iranian consulate, where now there's a concern that you could potentially have an escalation of intensity and fighting in the Middle East, and that any coalition that may have been supportive of what they're trying to call this effort to move toward a ceasefire may implode any minute now. And so let's be clear, you don't need clean water. If you're not after the water source, you're after the oil.
And
I can process the oil. I'm not drinking the water. Let's not lose sight of the fact of what this is, and it remains. The reason the prime minister has said that this war, this police action is going to last the entire year is because it's going to take that long to really just kind of seize the land, seize the access to the waterways, seize the resources that are off the coast. Because at the end of the day, this has always been a land grab. Let's not get this twisted. And so when we put it in the context, we have to remember, and it's curious to me, how we would have this conversation in direct violation of Resolution 2417 from the United Nations that says you cannot use starvation as a tool in warfare. Came out of the Security Council unanimously. So let's think about that in the context of, on one hand, the U.S. claims this entitlement to have absolute veto power of what happens. They're a permanent member of the Security Council. Then you have this resolution that speaks directly against what we just saw happen in Gaza. And now we don't hear anything. And instead, what we have is $18 billion of military sales going to the country that just bombed workers trying to bring humanitarian aid to the people in Palestine. Let's be real clear. This is a pig. Pigs grunt. They can't do anything else but grunt. Stop expecting that this pig is going to do anything else. And so that requires then for the resilience, unless you're going to have an exorcism to bring the demon that has been part of the American reality from its founding. Let's be clear, genocide is in the country's DNA. It starts with the indigenous Americans that we saw. Manifest Destiny and See the Shining Sea was genocide. We saw the expansion of the inhumanity of what is called the transatlantic slave trade. No, it was the trafficking in human bodies and using it for illicit ends, including sexual exploitation, for the folly of those who could do it without there being any recompense. Let's be real clear that when we think about Japanese internment camps, let's be real clear that this is not some aberration that causes us to wonder, where did this come from? It's a pig, and pigs grunt. And that's all pigs do until they become bacon.
Well, now there's that. And we have 5 minutes left. And so I would like to have, thank you, Grunt. Tarek, do you have family over there? I've got a couple of minutes for you. I'd like for you to give us some closing thoughts. Oh, Tarek?
Yep, I'm sorry. I know. Can you? I'm sorry, I missed that. Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Brilliant things are said when we're muted, but that's okay. Tarek, the 2 minutes belong to you.
You just want me to say anything, or did you have a question? I'm sorry, I missed what you said.
No, just closing thoughts. I wanted to know: do you have family over there? I mean, do you have a direct connection to what? I mean, when people hear Congresswoman Tlaib, they don't even know her grandmother's there. I didn't say her grandmother. Her grandmama's over there.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, Palestinians live a varied life depending on their location and depending on their circumstances, and usually their location dictates the circumstances. So, for example, the Palestinians in Gaza are living under a brutal siege and blockade, and now undergoing a brutal genocide. The Palestinians in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, are living under Israeli military occupation. And especially in East Jerusalem, they're living under draconian administrative laws that essentially is meant to take as much land as possible and leave as few Palestinians as possible in it, in a way that is different throughout the rest of the West Bank. And then you also have what is modern day Israel, the 1948 territories. And that's a critical point that I wanna mention here, is that even the Palestinians that are considered citizens in the state of Israel are living as second and third class citizens. There's 65 plus laws that directly or indirectly discriminate against those Palestinians, and they're deprived the benefits that flow from the national institution. So, for example, the Jewish National Fund, if you look at their charter, it talks about holding lands for Jews in perpetuity. So it doesn't say Israeli, it says Jews. Here in the U.S., we don't make a distinction legally, constitutionally speaking. We don't make a distinction between citizenship and nationality, whereas in Israel, there is a clear distinction between citizenship and nationality. If you are a national of the state, i.e., Jewish, then you get these benefits that come with the national institutions. If you're a citizen of the state, you don't. So Palestinians that live in Israel are citizens, but they are not nationals, and that's a clear distinction that Israel makes that we don't make here. So when I hear Republicans and Democrats, when they talk about Israel sharing our values, the question should be put to them: do you share the value of making a distinction between one's nationality and civic status? Would you ever in Congress make the following statement, that a Polish and German American has more rights than a Mozambique American or Nigerian American or an Egyptian American, whatever? Are you willing to make that kind of statement in Congress? No,
Well,
of course not, because it would seem racist. But you are defending it in Israel. You are defending that in Israel.
Tarek, we won't do that anymore. But
Right.
the point that Reverend Dr. Uri was making was, historically, yes, that is what we have always done. And in fact,
absolutely, we have a tradition of that.
Hold on, because I'm going to have to wrap up, but we're going to keep on going, everybody. And I want you to go to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel so you can hear the rest of this conversation. But the fact is, that has been the MO of the United States. There are books that are being written about the POWs from Germany who were brought to the United States, and they came through the South, and they said, wait a minute. They saw what was happening to Black people, and they said, oh, wait a minute. We didn't even do this over here. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, this is, I mean, and all of these, apartheid was based upon American Jim Crow system. That's how we get down in the United States. Now, the question is, are we going to go another way? What did Dr. King say? God bless him. God bless him. Where do we go from here? Chaos or community?
Chaos.
This has been the way of America and everybody who has followed us and everyone we have funded. We don't bring people over here unless they have betrayed their people, typically. That is how we do it. That is how we get down. The question is, are we going to continue to go this way? Are we going to continue to do this? Are we going to continue to side? Is might going to make right, or will right make might? Mm-hmm. Choose to stay whom ye will serve. Tarek, that is what we do. Jonah,
oh no,
that's
absolutely.
What we do.
I 100% agree with you. Yeah.
But stay right there, because I'm gonna get out of here for AM 950 radio. But if you all want to hear the rest of this, you have to come to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. I love you, everybody. God bless. Stay right there. Okay, Tarek, continue, because I'm going to continue.
Yes, I wanted to say that I 100% agree with you. What I'm talking about is the optics. Members of Congress will say the right things. Mm-hmm. They try to say the right things, even though they obviously don't believe in those things that they're stating. So I'm talking as a matter of hypocrisy, that you have members of Congress that will say, "Oh, I can never make a statement like that," but you are defending it somewhere else. That kind of hypocrisy is glaring. And I'll use East Jerusalem, where my family lives. Mm-hmm. That's where my family is. There is an unofficial policy that is put in place by Israel to maintain a 60%, 40% demographic reality in Jerusalem, in the Jerusalem municipality, wherein it must remain 60% Jewish and 40% Palestinian Arab. That policy is put in place. It's a draconian policy to foment a quiet and slow dispossession of the Palestinian people. Now, imagine somebody in Congress saying, we need to make DC 60% white and 40% minority. We need to put policies together where I mean, can you imagine the outcry if someone even said that?
No, I don't have to imagine it, because that's what gentrification is. I'm just saying, when you really study America, that's what we do. of the
Right?
Chicago.
I'm talking about statements. I'm talking about the words. Like
No,
they
no,
won't
no,
say the words.
I'm saying I'm talking about the reality.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I mean,
Absolutely.
there's some things that we won't say now, but we do it.
Oh,
I mean,
sure.
you know, and
Of
so
course.
I'm just saying to you, when you really study the United States, be very clear. This is what we do, and Israel has studied us. That's why we're here. I mean, Germany studied us. That's why they were there. I mean, we're the masters of it. South Africa studied us. They base their entire system upon what the black white dynamic in the United States. So I'm just simply saying to you, it's all been said before. So the question, and then so what I'm saying is, and I think Reverend and Terry, please help me out here, because all I'm simply saying is this is what we do. Now you can look at what we've done to begin to change the laws, but we're still fighting. We're still fighting for the vote. We're still fighting gerrymandering. We're still fighting gentrification. 300,000 Black people have been pushed out of Chicago. It has blown a hole in our political power in the United States. 1.3 million people were moved during Hurricane Katrina. That blew a hole in Black American politics and power.
Absolutely.
They would not let Black people work in Louisiana and Mississippi and Alabama. You know what they did, Tarek? They brought in workers from South and Central America like they're doing now. It's something called the tent program. That's why you got the migrant crisis. There's 400 corporations all around the world are bringing people in from all over the world, from countries that they bust.
Mm-hmm.
And then they bring them in and they make them work for cheap, and then they displace everybody else and they keep us fighting. So I'm just saying, I just want you, don't hate the player, know the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No,
So-
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just want to say, I said I grew up in Connecticut. I now live in Tennessee. I'm retired and I live in Tennessee. And I just want to quote from the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution, quote, "Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude except as a punishment for crime shall exist within the United States." So what do we have since mass incarceration was instituted into this country some, I want to say 30 years ago? We have enormous barriers to voting, not just voting, but civic participation generally, targeting African-American communities right here in Tennessee. Tennessee, according to what the voters actually want, poll after poll after poll after poll shows we want gun safety, we want women to have access to full range of reproductive health care, we want affordable housing, we want good education for all of our kids across the board. We don't have that in Tennessee. We have the one party has a stranglehold on the state legislature. Why? Because of gerrymandering, which targets Black communities and other marginalized communities, making it almost impossible for them to vote. So this is 2024, and this is going on in the state of Tennessee, which is kind of the tip of the spear for look in your own communities. These kinds of policies are coming for you. And so I just want to say, our entire country was built on genocide. There was the genocide of the Native Americans, which was entirely intentional on the part of the genocidaire president, Andrew Jackson, who is a son of Tennessee.
The Indian killer.
As it happens. Yes, the Trail of Tears guy, who intentionally created genocide. We have the Chinese exclusion laws. We have the Japanese exclusion laws reaching right into the 20th century. We have the entire state of Oregon, which was created after the Civil War and marketed to Confederate families as a whites-only state. And that was not changed until around 1920. So if you want to know where Israel is getting its will to do genocide, look no further than Israel's greatest, largest, wealthiest benefactor. That would be the United States of America. And I say that, and I don't think we should lose sight of the fact as we witness this terrible genocide, we need to understand the genocidal impulse of groups like Hamas, which is not directed at Israelis. It is only directed at Jews in Israel. And they're very specific. So you've got a genocidal Hamas, you've got a genocidal Netanyahu, and certainly the Israelis. Where are they getting their understanding of how the world works from? They're getting it from us. Let me just say.
Reverend Yuri, you have anything? Tarek? I mean, Reverend Yuri, you, then Tarek, because I am going to have to run after I finish getting these comments from you and Tarek and Jonah, because I'm actually getting some tests right now. I'm not at home. No. I'm fainting. I'm at home, but I'm not. Reverend Dr. Yuri.
Yeah, this is not a new story. It's a new episode in a repetitive plot. And the plot has always been designed to reinforce a certain order, certain expectation. After the murder of George Floyd, there was an imminent and urgent reckoning that caused white corporate America to really kind of figure out how do they avoid the blowback that was coming. And so there was a lot of commitment to money and all of these things that were going to go to justice-focused organizations. And as soon as they had the first opportunity to reshape the court and get a case in front of it, they pulled that whole rug out. And so what we have with UNC and the Harvard cases is those are really kind of your Plessy v. Ferguson cases of the 21st century. The whole goal is to move us back to really kind of unring the bell. And the way they unring the bell is not just in terms of domestic policy, but in terms of international relations. Let's not lose sight of the fact that the mediator for what ended up being called the Berlin Conference, right? The meeting that actually cannibalized and colonized the continent. The mediator was the United States. It settled the disputes amongst the countries that were contending for the same piece of land. And the dispute had to be established by this. One, you had to determine and prove that you had an economic interest that justified the claim. But the second thing is you had to prove that you had the military wherewithal to defend it. And so let's not lose sight of how colonization works. Let's not forget how the displacement of human beings works and for what purposes. Because at the end of the day, and I'm not changing my mind, this pig keeps grunting. And this pig keeps telling me that this is a land grab. It's been a land grab, not just since they came up with the new boundaries back in the mid 20th century. This has been always and forever will be a land grab. And when there's a land grab, as we have seen in the iconic fairy tale of exploration in the United States, we have a country. This is the craziness. We have a country that's named after Amerigo Vespucci, but we gave credit to the criminal known as Christopher Columbus and even gave him a holiday to support the lie. And at the end of the day, we still continue to play this game and run this hustle on the rest of the world as if people are too stupid to understand that what they hear is not rhetoric, it's a grunt.
Well, Jonah and then Tarek, you can close us out. Jonah?
I'm not sure I have much to add. I mean, I've just been sitting
grunt.
back and listening to this incredible commentary. I have been thinking about what Terry said. If you growing up in this country, the education that we receive is about American exceptionalism and about us being the greatest country in the world. And when you peel back, when you don't study American mythology, but you actually study history, the first time you hear about anything related to what it actually meant for what it actually meant to be enslaved, when you hear about the deliberate policy choices that segregated our cities, all of these things, you realize, whoa, America has a policy of this stuff. And it is only really since the mid 1960s and the absolute heroes that your father worked with who made us a genuine multiracial democracy, or at least something resembling it, which has really only existed in this country since the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act in the 1960s. It's only since then that we've been trying this experiment. So when I see what Israel is doing, which defiles my religion, to be perfectly honest, and I wonder, where does my moral authority as an American come from? Was our country not doing this, decades ago? Is our country still not doing this around the world today? And so, as I look at the horrors in Gaza, as I say not in my name, as I understand the power of my country to stop it, even as I am clear-eyed about the history of my country, I try to sit back with humility and think about understanding myself as, what does it mean to call myself an American, to be part of a country that has been on the wrong side of so many of these struggles, that has such a dreadful, sordid history, but also has this other promising side of a nation of immigrants, of grassroots social movements, of people coming together to fight for what's right and actually achieving it. And there is that better vision, and that is the vision that I hope that the Palestinian people can benefit from, that the Palestinian people will be free, that everyone from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, Jewish Palestinian, will live with equality and democracy. That's the world that I'm fighting for. And it is, especially when it seems so distant, that I have to ground myself in that.
And we'll get there. Tarek?
Yeah, actually, Jonah left it on a very positive note. I don't know how I can make it more positive than that. I will just say that I like what I'm seeing here in the United States in terms of the American populace. There is this growing solidarity movement, and we see our struggles as interconnected. The Black struggle for justice, the Palestinian struggle for justice and liberation, the struggle of all marginalized communities for equality, for justice, for equity, etc. And we're seeing an intellectual body of work that connects these struggles together and helping the American people understand the power dynamics involved. I think that's a wonderful thing. And we're seeing a huge shift in our polling data vis-a-vis Palestine, especially with the Gallup poll and Pew Research Center showing that the younger generation of Americans are sympathizing more with Palestinians than with Israel. So we're seeing that shift. And that shift is not coming from any kind of animus towards Jews. It's not coming from a sense of anti-Semitism, but it's coming from a sense of understanding the political reality and the human reality on the ground. And now with the rise of social media, we see these things happening and we see it live streamed, and you can't use language to cover that up anymore. Now we see it. Look, there's always been history of police brutality in the United States, but now with the advent of social media and where you get instant views on what is actually taking place, there are many incidences of George Floyd before George Floyd. But now that we're living in this time, now we get to see it right away, and we see the actual act in itself, and we see how the person dies. And we see that person die in front of our eyes. This is the kind of brutality that has defined the U.S. for 400 plus years, and it's that reality that we need to change. Okay, if you like the words that are on the paper, we must live by them. So just because the words say equal protection doesn't mean that there is equal protection. That's just words on a parchment. That's all it is. It does not carry into policy. And that's our job, is to make sure that it does carry into policy.
Well, and that's why the struggle continues. Because 40 years ago, when I first voted, you could not mention the word Palestinian in public discourse. We had a no-talk policy. A whole lot of blood was shed. A lot of people took a lot of hits to get us to this point. A whole lot of blood was shed. A lot of people took hits for Black people to get to this point, for Indigenous people to get to this point. Neil Gorsuch actually ruled in the Supreme Court that almost half of Oklahoma by treaty belongs to Indigenous people. What? That is a 400-500-year struggle. Didn't begin with me, it won't end with me. Didn't begin with you, won't end with you. It's going to continue. The struggle continues, but victory is certain when you continue with the struggle. And that is what we have to do. Can we imagine? Oh, yes, Tarek, because that is the America that we've always known. America has always been a right-wing nation grounded in right-wing principles, but there is God in their documents that shows us another way. That's the beauty of the Constitution. That's the beauty of the Bill of Rights. They might not have been talking about you and me, Terry, but guess what? They ended up talking about you and me, and you, Tarek, and you, Reverend Yuri, and you, Jonah. And it ended up, the Bible justified slavery. Some people did, but then it also helped me secure my freedom. It just depends upon how you look at it. So we just have to keep on going, and we have to keep on struggling and know that it's not going to end with any of us. At some point, we have to pass the baton. But while we've got the baton, run around this track, Tarek, and you keep fighting and see the interconnectedness of all of these struggles. Because it's one struggle. It's one struggle. And we are all one. I am Palestinian. You are Black. You are Indigenous. We all are Indigenous. You're a woman, you're a man, you're straight, you're gay. We're all of that. Mm-hmm. We're everything. We are one. And one day we're going to see it. All flesh shall see it together. Dr. King told us that. Whew, God rest his soul. Gone almost 60 years. More relevant than ever. Mm-hmm. More relevant than ever. They didn't kill him. He's more alive than he ever was. And I'm sending you so much love, Tarek, and you, Jonah, and you, Terry, and you, Reverend Dr. Yeri. Thank you so much for your wisdom. Thank you for your willingness to fight. Thank you for that. Love you, everybody. God bless you. And God bless you, Morning Stars. Pass the show along. We went a little long today. Oh, please. Yeah, look, your family here. So just come on here and do your thing, Tarek. I told you that.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah. Love you. Love you all.
Thank you, Santita.
God bless you. And happy Ramadan. May God bless you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
God bless you. Thank you, Jonah.